All right, so for using your charcoal, I'm going to show you a few different things about how you can get some sort of textures, things like that, and get some different effects. So you have these so you can try them, but please watch the demo so that you know what you are doing when you get to things later. So first thing, if you have something in perspective, let's see, is this on the screen? No, let's move this on the screen a bit more. So here's my box in perspective. I'm not using vanishing points and horizon lines, but you understand that this is my box, right? So with that, if I have, the first thing you want to do is choose your light source so you know how things are going to be shaded light or darker. So I'm going to, on my page, put my little sun, my little light source over here and know that the light is coming from the side. Just like you're drawing boxes from a corner, it helps to have the light coming from one of your sides. And then if the light is coming from here and kind of up above, this is going to be my lightest part, right? So in here, I might shade with just really lightly with the side of my pencil. And I'm using the charcoal pencil by holding it from the end. Notice that my hand is on the other end of the pencil, not down here. If I'm doing really careful lines, this is a great place to hold on to it. If I'm doing shading, hold it from the other end, because that way I can keep my touch really light and I can get really nice even values. As you shade, you want to shade either vertically, because vertical lines stay vertical in 2-point perspective, or you want to follow the direction of your lines that go to the vanishing point. If your shading does not follow the lines that go to the vanishing point, then you're going to run into problems because you're going to lose your illusion of depth. So you want your shading, that this is going toward this vanishing point, I want this to either stay vertical or go to my vanishing point. And as I look at this now, I might have to go back over things a bit. I say, oh, you know what? This doesn't quite, there's not a lot of difference here. So maybe I'll come back in here and go over these edges. So I'm going with the direction to the vanishing point and I'm going vertically. As you shade, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to shade in rows, because if you shade in rows, you tend to get uneven shading. And actually, because I'm holding it this way, it's not so bad. But you tend to get overlap in edges. The best way to shade is to keep your direction consistent, but keep your movements a little more random so that you're continuing in one direction, you're getting nice even values that way. So that's how you would get nice even values. So I might do something really light. Typically, your actual values are going to be pretty light. And to change and get a gradation, you just gradually lighten your pressure, like so. And then when you add things like buildings, so let's just say this is like a building that's kind of coming around, it's getting darker on that side. When I add a window, then I can go in and add darker edges. But if you keep that value on the side of your building light, when you add windows, they'll show up and they'll be darker. So that's general shading. Some things that a lot of you have in your pieces. A lot of you have areas of grass. Now, if you're doing grass, this is not realistic grass. No, don't do that. You want to have marks that equal the length and direction of your grass, basically, or anything that looks like, hair or fur. That's a general rule of thumb. So if I have little tiny things off in the distance, I need little tiny marks. As the grass gets closer to me, it might get taller if there's really a change in distance. And then it's not perfectly vertical grass, right? It's just like, it's mostly vertical. Some of it kind of angles a little bit. And I leave the space of the page to come through. I'm not shading it solid because grass isn't solid. I see the space of the page. So I'm thinking of textures. I want you to think of textures as you're shading your pieces. So let's say you have a brick building and you add some value to one side of the brick building. If you think of it as a texture, you can do things like just add little lines of where those bricks might come in and get the look of bricks without having to do every single brick. Now, some of you have spent some time already, and then bricks are varied in value, so then I'm going to go in, keeping my marks horizontal, but varying my value a little bit. Some of you have done some of this already with pencil, and if that's the case and you'd really rather continue with pencil, let me know, we'll check it out. If I'm doing the ground should have horizontal shading or shading that goes to my vanishing point because that would help it look flat. Adding a little variation to it might be a nice way to kind of get some movement to it. If you're doing clouds, what color are clouds typically? White. So I may want to just go in with white. Now, do clouds really look like this in life? Little puffballs? No! You've done a lot of hard work making these buildings look realistic and have depth using your 2-point perspective. So please don't give me cartoon clouds and trees and things like that. Clouds in life tend to have a flattish bottom because of the dew point. That's where the moisture actually starts to collect. And then, look, I can do something like this, and they have like this wispy little edge. And then maybe there's a little bit of a darker spot. If you look at your pictures, some of you have lovely clouds in your pictures. If you don't and you want lovely clouds, we can find you another reference. But look at those clouds so that the values change and move lightly, and they look like realistic clouds. So as you see here, you have more realistic clouds. Now, do not, if there's a shadow in your cloud, take the dark and go over it because you're going to get a muddy, yucky gray. Remember we talked about reuse colored paper because that's your middle value. So you're going to add the charcoal separately. White on its own, black on its own. Don't mix the charcoals. Let them be on their own. So let's just say you wanted to do a tree, for example. I don't want to see these trees either. These are cartoon trees. No! Again, no on the cartoon trees. You want a tree that looks realistic in space, right? How many of you have made a split tree before? Everyone ever heard of that? Oh, you're going to learn right now. Cool. This is an easy way to draw trees, and they look totally realistic. So watch. It's exciting. This is a little guy. He's just little because, I'm showing you little trees that might be off in the distance to start. I'm going to start with the base. Again, my light source is coming from over here, so this side's just a little lighter. I'm letting some of the light show through, and then I'm going to split my tree. So now he's in 2 branches, basically. And then I'm going to split him again. Then those 2 branches, guys, up here. Those 2 branches are going to split into 2 other branches. And every time you split, they have to get thinner because trees don't get thicker, right? The branches get thinner and thinner. And then they're just going to split into lines so that in the end, I should not hear pencils moving because you don't want to drop these pencils. The charcoal is actually very soft. And if you drop them or play with them a lot, you'll tend to break them. And then every time you want to sharpen a pencil, it ends up being broken and it gets kind of irritating. So please, just be gentle with the pencils, the charcoal. And then you can add some ones that just sort of go off. And look at, I'm just adding a little space. I'm not even connecting it entirely, because the light shines through trees like that. So I get a pretty realistic looking tree just by splitting it, and letting my marks get thinner each time. Now let's just say I want a tree with actual leaves on it. Maybe you don't want it to be a wintry tree. I'm gonna start with that, and you can go bigger again. This is just because it's quick and I can get in a demo. I'm gonna split it, like I did before. Maybe I'll show a little split again. And then I'm going to start to add leaves and branches. And I'm thinking in textures. I'm not thinking I'm drawing a leaf and a leaf and a leaf. Instead, what I'm doing is just drawing little marks that indicate the leaves. And I'm letting the light show through. You always look at trees. That's your homework today. On your way home, I want you to look at the trees and notice how the light shines through them. And how you see almost like these blobs. We've talked about spheres a little bit. It's almost like blob spheres in the tree where there might be the light source is coming from here, so it might be a little darker. You need a little more pressure over here. Maybe there's a blob over here because, there's a big branch under there. But then you let the space of the page come through. So I'm just making little marks. I'm not shading a whole area. And I start to get the idea of a more realistic tree as things come in. And then I say, oh, maybe it's dark here. Maybe it's dark here. And you get things like that. So thinking in texture, thinking in trees, in not like specific leaves, but things like that. So let's see. What else did I want to show you? We've got clouds, we got bricks, we got trees. Wood textures can kind of be something like giving it a little bit of movement. Direction we talked about. Maybe this is an edge of some wood. Water. A lot of you have water. Now, water should sit flat. Does water really go like this? make these like wavy things. Is it really like, no, it's not that way either. Unless you're drawing cartoons, which we're not, we don't want to do that. So water, bless you, because it usually tends to be kind of flat. I tend to have just some movement like this. Maybe there's some darker edges in there. Subtle little movement in my mark will give me much more realistic looking water. Maybe I want to add a little bit of value in there. And I can add some glimmer of light. Oh, look, there's just a little bit of white coming in my water randomly throughout, not uniform. You can do things kind of like that. So I have ideas for clouds, I have wood, I can add little dots to my tree if I want to get some highlights in there, but again, they do not overlap. And if I did something like here, my window, maybe my window has like a little like light on it that way. But the white is just for highlights, just for little tiny edges, and most of your work is in black. Unless, of course, you have the dark paper, and then you do it all in white. So those are your options. Questions? All right, thank you.